What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the After Credits Scene. We are talking all things episode 3 of Daredevil Born Again. Got a whole lot to go through, including the fallout and what it means from the end of the episode for everything moving forward. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so when we drop new content, you'll be the first one to know about it. And then share this sucker all across the multiverse. First and foremost, I was excited before the episode even started because the title, The Hollow of His Hand, as a minister is definitely pulled from Scripture, pulled from church tradition as well. And so the idea there that they're using some of those references, I hope bodes well for a little more theological push in the future. I think, I've heard some commentary from some folks who's watched all 9 episodes that say it's not as heavy-handed as they would have liked. But if Matt visits a church at any point or has a confessional or talks to somebody about his faith at least once, I'll be fine. We can move forward. I get that they're trying to bring in new audiences, and sometimes that can be divisive. As much as I'd love for it to really be part of who the character is, I'm going to give a lot of leeway because I'm just glad the character's back at the moment. Having said that, my first thoughts were whose hand, or the Hand, as the underground organization, the Hand, is always a big part of Daredevil lore. But in the hollow of whose hand? Who is protecting who? And what does that mean? When we get to the end of the episode, we get some commentary on, may God hold Foggy Nelson and others in the hollow of his hand. Basically, I hope that God protects people. But the insinuation there, especially for somebody like Matt, who, even as a devil, is somebody who feels a strong sense of it's the right thing to do, as Hector continues to mention in his cross-examination. Matt feels like he is trying to protect people in the hollow of his hand. From Scripture, the conversation with Elijah in the Old Testament, where Elijah has just come from a battle and he is dejected and he is down. And he's afraid that he's going to be attacked from all sides. God leads him out into the desert, tells him to eat some, drink something, and then God's going to appear to him. And it says that God protected him in the cleft of this rock, and that God caused an earthquake and a fire and a wind to pass by him, but God wasn't in those. I think they're all, an argument could be made that those are all godly occurrences if he can make them happen, but God wasn't in those. He wasn't present in those. But then God tells him, removes his hand and says, come out because I'm going to pass by you. And then he comes by, he appears in a whisper. Seemingly, you could take that story, if you use that story from the title, to insinuate more than just may God use all of his people to protect us in whatever way, insinuating that Daredevil needs to take up the mantle again and protect people in a way that Matt Murdock can't, to honor his calling, as Hector Ayala said. But you can also extrapolate from the biblical encounter that sometimes what is needed is not, and where God is present is not in these big explosive moments, but God is present in the small things that you do as well. That God is in a whisper, that you need to find him in those moments. And maybe it's something that is permeates the story more and deeper. I think maybe on a second watch, going back through and seeing those things, maybe those things pull out of there. But I think a lot of those ideas, particularly with how we approach who we are, how do we approach our calling, how do we approach what we feel like we're put on this earth to do, and if it's the right thing, it's the right thing, and we do it no matter what. That the consequences are not our responsibility so much as do the right thing first. And so this idea that God is in a whisper, is God talking directly to you, or are you reacting to the big moments and saying, well, that's just God, right? It's so big I can't fathom it, so it must be God, rather than allowing yourself to be scooped up, to be protected in a way that God only knows how. I think is extrapolating rather deeply on the title itself, but nevertheless, I thought it was a really great title, and it has elements throughout the entire story that you could probably go through and pull out. Another question right off the bat, we get Fisk eating breakfast with Vanessa. They're talking about the business, and you find out that Vanessa has sent people from Fisk's office to take care of her dealings. And Fisk says, that's not what we're going to do. That's not who we are. And he kind of gives her this not heavy-handed at all speech, pardon the pun there, but this is not who we are. This is not what we're going to do. This is our goal. She clearly doesn't feel like that's their goal, and she wants to do her own thing. But after giving this speech that is not heavy-handed, the camera pans down to his hand, which has clearly been heavy-handed, and it's got bruises and scrapes on it. My question is, who has Fisk been punching? My guess would be no one, that he's at war with himself, and you're going to find out he's punching a mirror, he's punching a wall, something that is immovable, that he is battling himself. The back and forth there was really good. The tension that is building there, that people are not being true to who they are internally. As much as you'd like to see somebody do the right thing, and doing the right thing is the right thing in terms of if Fisk is going straight, yeah, that's the right thing. But we know that that's not who he feels like he is, and that he may be fighting against his nature. That's not how he thinks things get done. And he's trying to fit himself into a mold that even he knows he doesn't fit into, which is the same with Matt, which is the same with several people that we're going to encounter. And so we get to see more Punisher graffiti with the word triggered over it out on the city walls. We see another Punisher logo on somebody's neck. These cops are taking measures into their own hands, and they're using the banner of Punisher to do it. I think is an unintended consequence of who Frank Castle is, but I think when Matt catches up with him, which is something we've seen in the trailers, but also something that is inevitable, Matt is going to have to grapple with the fact that, and Frank will as well, that Frank is being judge and jury along with executioner, but because he thinks it's the right thing and he knows that these people are evil, is it okay for him to do, as opposed to the police who are only self-serving, or potentially these police officers who might be self-serving. And what does that say about them as vigilantes if you don't trust the police to be judge, jury, and executioner, but you do trust yourself? I think in terms of a storyline really goes back to, you need to trust yourself to do the right thing when it's the right thing, but be willing to be put on trial for the consequences if they don't go your way. Should hold true for Punisher, should hold true for Daredevil, should hold true for the police officer, should hold true for White Tiger. But in this instance, White Tiger was in the right, and it really puts the police officers on trial. And so this whole, what masks do we wear and what should we do? Matt has that conversation with Hector Ayala, but Hector doesn't know that Matt is Daredevil. So when Hector responds to him and says, this is what you should do, and this is how things should happen, they're having this conversation, and Hector is really speaking to Daredevil, even though he doesn't know it. Matt is working out his own salvation, so to speak, working out his own journey back to Daredevil in court with Hector, because he sees a lot of himself in that. And he drops a line that I think is very telling. He says, would you walk into battle with one arm tied behind your back? When he talks about Hector fighting these police officers without his amulet on. And Matt says, I wouldn't walk into battle with one hand behind my back. But that's exactly what he's doing as Matt Murdock. He's not using everything that he feels called to do because he set that down because he feels like he crossed a line. Honestly, I think his faith is going to bring him back to that God offers salvation, that God offers forgiveness, but you have to forgive yourself. Even the comments where it says the mask doesn't make the man is true, but Matt doesn't really believe that, because I think when he puts on his Daredevil mask, he thinks it takes him over, and that somehow the devil of Hell's Kitchen is smothering out who Matt Murdock is, and he wants to do the right thing, but he has this persona that allows him to do the right thing no matter what. And his battle is, he's more critical of Matt for setting down and giving up and using the justice system to solve things instead of putting on the mask and solving things as Daredevil. He's more critical of Matt as a lawyer for doing that than he is of Daredevil for killing somebody who, in Punisher's mind and other people's mind, probably deserved it. And so it's a battle that is ongoing. Fisk is going through the same thing. But Hector pretty well knows that this is who he is. And I think as much as his wife doesn't like him doing it, she knows this is who my husband is. I can't be around it, but I'm not going to tell him not to do it. And so there's a lot of that going on in this episode, and they're kind of putting each other on trial, so to speak. We see Matt at the end in a courtroom. After the courtroom scene, he's in there by himself, and he is rolling around this devil horn that is clearly had the paint worn off of it by the fact that he's been fiddling with it in his pocket. It's his own worry stone, battling with who he is and should he put that back on, put the cowl back on, put himself back together because he's fiddling with a piece of it. And we know that there's a full helmet somewhere that is missing a piece. He's missing a piece of himself. But it's interesting that Matt is holding a smaller piece of Daredevil than the Daredevil mask is missing, right? The Daredevil mask is more complete. It's missing a smaller piece. Matt is not whole because he doesn't have all of Daredevil with him, and he has to figure out how to reconcile those two in a way that is going to bring him peace in more than one way. And so the end there, you know, I think there's an argument to be had that it was not Matt's place to out Hector as White Tiger. I think from the Daredevil side, Matt knows this is the only way for you to get free. This is the only way for you to use all of who you are to prove that you are the man you say you are. That you can't hide behind the mask. You can't protect the mask. You need to use that to be a whole person again. Matt does not believe this yet, and he's still working on it. But Hector's right when he says it wasn't your job, it wasn't your role to out me like this. And Matt says, you know, it needs to work. It needs to be this. It needs to be that. And those conversations are just dripping with subtext. And I think it was very well written in that regard. He gets free. Matt tells him you can't put the mask on anymore. If you want to be free, you have to give it up. You can't do that anymore. You've been set free. But set free from what? Hector was already free, right? Hector was already doing the right thing, and he had no regrets. So he puts the costume back on because he is both things. It reminded me of the Senate hearing where Tony Stark says you can't have the Iron Man suit because Iron Man, the suit and I are one. We are Iron Man. It's not one or the other. That I can't take the suit off. If I take the suit off, I'm denying who I am. I'm denying my ability to do right. It is Hector's conversation of Peter Parker's with great power comes great responsibility. It's the same thing with Matt. The only problem is Matt is scared that when he puts on the costume, he likes the violence. He likes the fighting. And I think he has to come to grips with that. And so that's going to be an ongoing underlying theme. And when he gets met with somebody that is bigger and worse and that only he can handle, like a Bullseye, like a Wilson Fisk, which is why I think part of him is just begging Fisk to do the wrong thing. He can put back on the mask and feel justified in doing it because extreme measures call for extreme measures. But he doesn't want to be the one to ring that bell. And so to see what happens from here is going to be really awesome. I think the end there with White Tiger getting shot, the battle is going to be, was it Punisher, was it not? I don't think it is Frank Castle, but I think Matt is going to go in search of him nonetheless. I think it is not because Frank would never do that. Frank would not go after another vigilante. Frank would not believe a court sentence, especially one that Matt was involved in, without talking to Matt, because he knows Matt would know. Because he knows Matt well enough to know Matt wouldn't represent somebody if he didn't think they were innocent. And he wouldn't be doing something that Matt was afraid to do either. In that regard, Matt's representing him. He's got to know, Frank has to know that Matt has reasons for doing that, and he wouldn't just go out and take out the vigilante. Odds are Frank would believe that the cop was more corrupt than the vigilante, and he would probably capture that vigilante first before he did anything like that, similar to what he did to Daredevil in season 2 on Netflix. I think it doesn't follow Frank's MO at all to not only go behind Matt's back, but to kill another vigilante if that vigilante was saying that the police were corrupt. I think he'd be more willing, especially with all the different Punisher tattoos and everything out there. I think it's more Frank's MO to believe that the police are corrupt because that's what makes a vigilante. The system is not doing its job. They're already on that side. So to take out another vigilante to do the cops' work for them is not Frank's MO. And so I think it is a cop dressing up like Punisher. I think Matt is going to go in search of that guy. Or Punisher is going to go in search of that guy. And that is where Matt and Frank are going to meet up. And that conversation is going to be amazing as well. I sense a scene where Frank ends up being the mentor that Matt never knew he needed. I don't think it's going to last very long because they have some very deep-seated differences in implementation, but it's going to be awesome nonetheless. Curious what you guys think. There was a whole lot of awesome in this episode, and for a courtroom drama with no fights in the middle of it, it was a very excellent episode. It was a whole lot of fun to watch, and I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop for us to get some more, to get Muse, to get Frank Castle, to get Matt back in a Daredevil costume, to get all these different things that are coming where Matt doesn't just toy around with helping people, but he actually puts the persona on again because it is part of who he is. Curious what you guys think about all this. Please add your comments down below. Share this video, hit all the buttons, do all the things. Check out our other videos. We got extra reviews and extra forecast videos that you can check out. And as always, guys, you know when the next one drops, we'll catch you right back here. Later.